The missile punched through meter-thick, reinforced concrete at precisely 2:47 a.m., guided by an algorithm that had learned to see through walls. The Hezbollah commander, sleeping in what he believed was an impenetrable safe house, never knew the Israeli drone circling overhead had spent the previous 90 seconds fusing thermal signatures, ground-penetrating radar returns, and acoustic vibrations into a targeting solution accurate to within 3 meters. His security protocols were sophisticated random schedule changes, electronic jammers, multiple decoy locations. None of it mattered. The AI system had identified patterns in his behavior invisible to human analysts, micro-routines he didn't know he had. When the shaped charge detonated inside his reinforced chamber, the family sleeping in the adjacent apartment felt only a tremor. The external building structure remained standing. Israeli operators confirmed target elimination within 4 minutes through sensor data showing his heat signature's disappearance. Hezbollah's defensive doctrine, billions invested in hardened infrastructure, concrete walls as absolute protection, had encountered an adversary that turned solid barriers transparent. The strike occurred at 2:47 a.m. on September 23, 2024. In the Dahieh suburb of southern Beirut, a densely packed neighborhood where Hezbollah maintained operational infrastructure beneath layers of civilian population. The target was Ibrahim Akil, a senior commander in Hezbollah's elite Radwan force responsible for planning cross-border operations against northern Israel. He had spent the evening in what he considered an impenetrable position, a reinforced safe house embedded within a residential building, surrounded by families, protected by meter-thick concrete walls designed to withstand Israeli airstrikes. Israeli surveillance had confirmed his presence through multiple intelligence streams. Signals intercepts placed him at the location. Human sources reported a high-level meeting scheduled for that night. Thermal imaging from orbiting drones detected unusual activity inside the building. But confirmation of presence meant nothing without a viable targeting solution. The building's construction made conventional strikes impossible without catastrophic civilian casualties. Ground operations in Dahieh were strategically unfeasible. Hezbollah controlled the territory completely, maintained sophisticated early warning networks, and could mobilize hundreds of fighters within minutes. Akil understood these realities. He had survived Israeli targeting attempts before by exploiting exactly this dynamic. Embed within civilian populations, fortify positions with concrete and steel, force Israel to choose between accepting his continued operations or accepting international condemnation for mass civilian casualties. For years, this defensive doctrine had protected Hezbollah's leadership structure, even as Israel eliminated targets across Syria, Iraq, and occasionally Lebanon when conditions permitted clean strikes. The safe house represented the culmination of lessons learned from decades of conflict. External walls incorporated steel reinforcement bars spaced at intervals calculated to defeat bunker-penetrating munitions. Interior rooms were positioned away from exterior walls, creating additional barriers between potential strike points and human targets. Electronic countermeasures jammed certain frequency ranges to disrupt guidance systems. The building's location in a densely populated block made it nearly impossible for Israeli forces to isolate the structure without affecting surrounding homes. Israeli military intelligence had been tracking Akil for months following his role in planning rocket attacks on Israeli cities during the escalating border conflict that followed October 7, 2023. He was not merely a tactical commander managing local cells. He held strategic responsibility for Hezbollah's Northern Front operations, coordinating with Iranian advisors and other resistance axis elements. His elimination would disrupt command structures and signal Israeli reach regardless of defensive measures. But previous targeting attempts had failed for precisely the reasons Akil relied upon: In June, surveillance confirmed him entering a different safe house, but the building's civilian occupancy made strike authorization impossible. In July, intelligence located him at a meeting in a Beirut suburb, but he departed before operational assets could be positioned. In August, he traveled through Damascus, but Syrian air defense systems and Russian military presence in the area created unacceptable escalation risks. The September 23 opportunity differed only in timing and confirmation certainty. Akil was inside a hardened structure, surrounded by civilians, protected by concrete barriers that would defeat conventional weapons. Israeli commanders faced the same impossible calculation that had protected him before: launch a missile powerful enough to penetrate the walls, kill everyone in the building, and likely damage adjacent structures. Deploy a ground team, trigger urban combat that would cost Israeli lives and achieve nothing beyond Hezbollah propaganda victory, or accept that this target remained operationally unreachable. The decision to deploy AI-enhanced sensor fusion technology represented a crossing point that Israeli military planners had been approaching for years. The technology had been tested in controlled environments and validated through simulations, but operational deployment against a high-value target in a civilian area carried risks that extended beyond the immediate strike. If the system failed, if the algorithms misidentified the target location, if the precision proved insufficient, the consequences would include civilian deaths and the exposure of capabilities that Israel preferred to keep undisclosed. Somewhere in the classified decision chain, authorization was given. The AI-enhanced drone was already airborne, conducting surveillance operations over southern Beirut. At approximately 2:45 a.m., operators activated the sensor fusion protocols, directing the system to focus on the building where Akil was confirmed present. Multiple data streams began feeding into machine learning algorithms trained on thousands of scenarios designed to solve exactly this problem: identify human targets through solid barriers using only external sensor data. The technology that killed Ibrahim Akil in Dahieh had not been developed for him personally. It was the product of a strategic problem that had been growing for years across Israel's northern frontier. After the 2006 Lebanon War, Hezbollah drew stark conclusions from its confrontation with Israeli air power. The group poured resources into hardened bunkers, underground tunnels, and reinforced safe houses embedded in civilian areas. The goal was simple: deny Israel clean targets. Force every potential strike to carry an unacceptable political and humanitarian cost. For a time, the strategy worked. Israeli precision weapons were formidable, but they still obeyed basic physics. Missiles needed either a visible target, a pre-programmed coordinate, or a beacon that could survive jamming and deception. Hardened structures, particularly those buried or wrapped in concrete, blunted that advantage. Hezbollah commanders learned to live behind walls and below ground. They understood that as long as they stayed invisible to sensors, they remained functionally untouchable. The events of October 7, 2023, accelerated a shift that had already begun inside Israel's defense establishment. As Hamas attacked southern Israel and war erupted in Gaza, Hezbollah increased pressure on the northern border rocket barrages, sniper fire, infiltration attempts. Israeli planners understood that any prolonged conflict with Hezbollah would involve not just rockets, but coordinated ground raids led by units like the Radwan Force. Neutralizing key Radwan commanders became a priority not just for immediate security, but for deterrence. Yet, every assessment of Hezbollah's leadership architecture returned to the same obstacle. The men Israel most wanted to neutralize operated from within hardened spaces. Concrete, earth, and steel absorbed blast energy, scattered sensor readings, and shielded human heat signatures. Precision weapons could destroy buildings, but not without killing everyone inside. For a military that invested heavily in minimizing civilian casualties, both for ethical reasons and to preserve international support, this was a strategic trap. Inside Israeli research institutions and defense companies, the problem had been framed in technical terms long before Akil entered the picture. How do you generate a reliable targeting solution when you cannot see the target and cannot place sensors inside the structure? How do you distinguish between a commander in a reinforced room and a sleeping family on the other side of the wall using only external data? These were not questions that traditional intelligence methods could fully answer. The answer that emerged was not a single device, but a system, an AI-driven sensor fusion architecture designed to combine multiple imperfect data streams into a coherent, high-confidence picture. Thermal imaging alone could detect heat patterns, but struggled with concrete barriers and ambient noise. Ground-penetrating radar could map structural geometry, but could not reliably identify humans in motion. Acoustic sensors could detect vibrations from footsteps and voices, yet urban environments produced constant interference. Each sensor type resembled a witness who could only see part of the scene. Machine learning offered a way to combine those limited perspectives. Israeli engineers trained algorithms on vast datasets of buildings, human movement patterns, and environmental conditions. Simulated scenarios modeled how heat bled through concrete of different thicknesses, how footsteps on third-floor apartments differed from those in basements, how voices reverberated in narrow rooms versus open halls. Over time, the system learned to match external signatures to internal realities with increasing accuracy. This development did not occur in a vacuum. Reports from defense analysts described a global race toward military AI, with the United States, China, Russia, and regional powers all exploring variations of automated targeting and sensor fusion. Israel's advantage lay in decades of operational experience and a tight feedback loop between battlefield needs and technological development. Every failed strike, every missed target hidden behind concrete became another data point, pushing research toward a system that could, in effect, make walls transparent without physically breaching them first. Hezbollah, for its part, adapted in ways that made this race more urgent. Commanders shortened their exposure times, holding brief meetings and then moving quickly between locations. Communications shifted increasingly to couriers and in-person briefings to avoid interception. Safe houses multiplied, with some serving as decoys designed to attract surveillance and dilute Israel's attention. Randomization became doctrine. The goal was to ensure that even if Israel knew a commander's general location, the precise room or moment for a strike would remain uncertain. Uncertainty was exactly what AI aimed to minimize. Where human analysts might see noise-shifting heat blobs on a thermal feed, faint vibration traces on a sensor log, subtle timing patterns in power consumption, a trained model could detect repetition. If a commander favored a particular room for late-night briefings, if his bodyguards paced in specific patterns outside a reinforced door, if lights in a certain part of the building followed a recognizable schedule, the system could flag it. Not as absolute truth, but as a probability rising steadily toward operational usefulness. By the time Ibrahim Akil settled into the Dahieh safe house on that September night, these systems were no longer theoretical. They had been tested, refined, and calibrated in other theaters, often in less sensitive environments where mistakes, while costly, would not ignite a regional firestorm. What remained was the question of when to risk deploying them against a target whose elimination would reverberate from Beirut to Tehran. That question connected technology back to strategy. Killing Akil would not end Hezbollah's capabilities, just as previous assassinations had not dismantled other organizations. But it would send a message about the futility of relying on concrete and civilians as shields. It would show that invisibility, once Hezbollah's greatest defensive asset, could now be turned against it. And it would demonstrate to Iran and other members of the resistance axis that investments in hardened infrastructure were no longer sufficient to guarantee leadership survival. When Israeli commanders reviewed the options before the Dahieh operation, they were balancing more than just tactical variables. They were testing an answer to a problem years in the making. The strike that would follow was the operational expression of a deeper shift, from a world where walls defined safety to one where algorithms decided who, behind those walls, could still be reached. At 2:45 a.m., the drone activated a suite of sensors that had been orbiting passively for hours. The aircraft itself was unremarkable, an advanced reconnaissance platform that Israeli forces routinely deployed over Lebanon, often without drawing sustained anti-aircraft fire. Hezbollah's air defense network tracked it, but operators had grown accustomed to Israeli drones conducting surveillance missions that rarely escalated into immediate strikes. The aircraft maintained altitude, circled in predictable patterns, and behaved like a platform gathering intelligence for future operations rather than preparing for imminent action. What made this particular drone different was invisible to ground-based radar and to the human eye. Embedded within its airframe was a sensor array designed specifically for through-barrier detection, a thermal imaging system capable of detecting minute temperature variations through concrete, ground-penetrating radar configured to map interior building structures and identify density anomalies that might indicate human presence. Acoustic sensors sensitive enough to register vibrations from footsteps, voices, and movement transmitted through solid materials. Each sensor operated independently, generating data streams that, in isolation, provided only fragmentary and often ambiguous information. The thermal camera detected heat signatures throughout the target building. Families sleeping generated warm clusters. Electronic devices produced smaller hotspots. Heating systems, still active despite the late hour, created ambient temperature patterns. Distinguishing between a sleeping commander and a civilian family based solely on thermal data was effectively impossible. The concrete walls absorbed and diffused heat, blurring sharp edges into indistinct gradients. Ground-penetrating radar offered structural clarity but human ambiguity. It mapped the building's interior architecture with precision walls, floors, support columns, the reinforced chamber where a keel was believed to be located. The system could identify rooms and measure their dimensions, but radar reflections from human bodies were weak and easily masked by furniture, electronics, and building materials. The data confirmed that certain spaces existed, not definitively what occupied them. Acoustic detection faced its own limitations. Urban environments produce constant noise, vehicles passing on nearby streets, wind against buildings, electrical systems humming through walls, neighbors moving in adjacent apartments. The sensors could detect vibrations, but attributing specific sounds to specific sources required interpretation. A footstep in one room might register identically to furniture being moved in another. Voices were detectable, but concrete muffled them into indistinct murmurs. This was where AI-driven sensor fusion became operationally necessary. The algorithms did not rely on any single data stream to make targeting decisions. Instead, they processed all available inputs simultaneously, searching for patterns that human operators could not easily recognize. Machine learning models, trained on thousands of scenarios, had developed an ability to correlate thermal anomalies with structural features, acoustic patterns with movement types, and temporal sequences with human behavior. The system identified heat signatures that appeared in specific rooms at consistent times, suggesting routine occupancy rather than random civilian movement. It detected vibration patterns consistent with human walking rhythms, cadence, weight distribution, directional changes that matched profiles of pacing security personnel. Radar returns showed furniture arrangements that created clear paths between a reinforced door and interior spaces, suggesting deliberate security architecture rather than residential layout. Individually, none of these observations constituted proof. A family might keep similar hours. Civilians walk and pace. Furniture can be arranged in ways that happen to resemble security protocols. But when the AI processed these elements together, it began calculating probabilities. The heat signature in the northeast corner room appeared at times when other parts of the building showed minimal activity, consistent with a high-value individual maintaining separation from other occupants. The acoustic patterns included lower-frequency vibrations suggesting male voices in conversation, not the higher pitches of women or children. The structural layout matched known safe-house configurations documented in intelligence databases. The confidence level rose incrementally as the system ingested more data. 70%, 80%. At 90%, the algorithms flagged the location as a potential targeting solution but maintained surveillance. Israeli operators watching the system's output saw probabilities, not certainties. The machine was not making the decision to strike. It was presenting an assessment based on patterns it had been trained to recognize. At approximately 2:46 a.m., the confidence threshold crossed 95%. The AI system indicated with high probability that a human target matching the expected profile, male, adult, security-conscious movement patterns, occupying a reinforced room designed for protection, was present in the northeast corner chamber. The location aligned with intelligence reports placing Akil in that building. The timing matched known behavioral patterns from previous surveillance. The sensor fusion had generated what Israeli operators considered an acceptable targeting solution, despite the complete absence of visual confirmation. A human operator reviewed the data. The screen displayed thermal overlays, radar structural maps, acoustic signature graphs, and the AI's probability assessment. Protocols required human authorization before weapons release. The operator confirmed civilian proximity analysis adjacent apartments showed heat signatures consistent with sleeping families, but blast modeling indicated that a precision munition could be contained within the reinforced chamber if correctly targeted. Collateral damage risk was assessed as minimal if the strike hit the specified coordinate with expected accuracy. The authorization was given. What had been sensor data and probability calculations became an operational command. The AI had identified the target location through concrete barriers that would have defeated conventional intelligence methods. Now the question shifted from "where is he?" to whether the technology could deliver a strike precise enough to validate the algorithm's assessment without killing everyone nearby. The technology alone would have been useless without the intelligence preparation that began months before the September strike. Israeli intelligence networks had been tracking Ibrahim Akil since his role in the 1983 Beirut barracks, bombing that killed 241 American service members and 58 French paratroopers. Decades of surveillance had built a detailed profile. His operational history, command relationships, personal habits, security protocols. But profiles did not provide real-time locations, and Akil's movements had grown increasingly cautious as Israeli targeting capabilities improved. The breakthrough came through pattern-of-life analysis conducted over weeks of sustained observation. Multiple intelligence streams converged on Akil's activities in Dahi. Signals intelligence intercepted communications without revealing content. Encrypted messages whose metadata indicated coordination among senior Hezbollah figures. Human sources reported meetings scheduled at locations that matched the safe house later targeted. Surveillance drones documented vehicle movements, tracking cars that entered underground garages and emerged hours later with passengers whose identities could not be visually confirmed, but whose arrival patterns suggested command-level figures. This kind of intelligence work required patience that contradicted public perceptions of instantaneous drone strikes. Israeli analysts spent months correlating fragmentary data points. A vehicle seen near one suspected safe house would be tracked across Beirut, its route analyzed for counter-surveillance, behavior abrupt turns, speed variations, stops in locations designed to expose tails. When the same vehicle appeared repeatedly at the Dahieh location, algorithms flagged it as operationally significant. Electronic surveillance provided additional texture. Mobile phone usage patterns in the vicinity of the safe house showed anomalies consistent with security protocols. Certain devices appeared and disappeared on predictable schedules, suggesting bodyguards rotating shifts. Other devices remained powered off for extended periods, consistent with operational security measures that prohibited electronic communication during sensitive meetings. The absence of signals became as informative as their presence. Hezbollah's counter-surveillance measures were sophisticated precisely because the organization had been targeted before. Commanders understood that Israeli intelligence exploited patterns, so they attempted to inject randomness. Akil did not maintain a fixed schedule. He used multiple vehicles, sometimes arriving in unmarked civilian cars rather than the armored SUVs that telegraphed high-value passengers. Meetings were scheduled irregularly, announced on short notice through couriers rather than electronic communication. Safe houses were rotated, with some locations used once and then abandoned. These precautions created operational friction for Israeli planners, but they did not eliminate patterns entirely. Human beings, even those trained in counter-surveillance, develop micro-routines that become detectable over time. Akil might vary which safe house he used on a given night, but he tended to hold late-evening meetings after dark when civilian foot traffic decreased. His security detail followed protocols that, while varied in specifics, adhered to consistent principles establishing perimeter security before he arrived. Maintaining radio silence during sensitive discussions, departing in staggered intervals. Israeli AI systems, when fed months of surveillance data, began identifying patterns that human analysts had not consciously recognized. The algorithms detected temporal correlations. Certain vehicle movements occurred within specific time windows more frequently than randomness would predict. They identified spatial patterns. Meetings tended to occur in locations that offered multiple escape routes and proximity to Hezbollah-controlled neighborhoods. They recognized behavioral signatures. Security personnel adopted scanning patterns and positioning that revealed their training even when they attempted to appear as ordinary civilians. The safe house in Dahia emerged as a location of particular interest through this layered analysis. It had been used before, but not frequently enough to suggest permanent occupation. Its structural characteristics reinforced construction. Underground parking, location embedded within a residential block, matched known Hezbollah architectural preferences. Surveillance documented abnormal activity levels during periods when intelligence suggested Akil was meeting with subordinate commanders to plan operations against Israeli northern communities. Building assessment became critical as the possibility of a strike evolved from abstract consideration to operational planning. Israeli intelligence analyzed the structure's construction through multiple methods. Architectural records, when available, provided baseline data about materials and layout. Surveillance imagery captured details about external modifications, reinforced doors, window configurations that suggested internal partitioning, ventilation systems that indicated underground or sealed spaces requiring active airflow. The AI-enhanced sensors eventually deployed during the strike were calibrated based on this prior intelligence. Machine learning models were trained on the specific building's characteristics. Engineers simulated how thermal signatures would appear through that particular thickness and composition of concrete. Acoustic models predicted how vibrations would transmit through the structure given its documented construction materials. Ground-penetrating radar parameters were optimized for the density profiles expected in a building of that age and design. This preparation addressed one of Hezbollah's most effective defensive adaptations. The organization had learned that varying operational patterns made individual instances unpredictable, even if general behaviors remained consistent. By the time Akil entered the safe house on the night of September 23rd, Israeli systems had been pre-configured to analyze that specific location with maximum efficiency. The algorithms did not need to solve the problem from scratch. They were executing a plan developed through months of intelligence groundwork. Hezbollah's security protocols, for all their sophistication, operated on an assumption that would prove catastrophic. The organization believed that if Israeli intelligence could not place human assets inside a safe house and could not achieve visual confirmation through windows or external observation, then the target remained effectively invisible. Concrete walls were treated as absolute barriers to sensor-based targeting. This assumption was reasonable based on historical experience. Previous Israeli strikes had required either direct visibility or pre-positioned explosives planted by infiltrators. What Hezbollah did not fully anticipate was that invisibility to human eyes no longer meant invisibility to algorithmic analysis. The concrete walls that blocked visual confirmation also concentrated heat signatures, created acoustic resonance patterns, and produced radar reflections that, when processed through machine learning models trained specifically on that building, became targeting data. Akil's security measures had not failed through negligence. They had become inadequate against a technological capability that transformed defensive architecture into a source of exploitable information. When the strike authorization was given at 2:46 a.m., it represented the convergence of intelligence, preparation, and technological execution. The algorithms processing sensor data were not operating blindly. They were confirming patterns that months of surveillance had predicted. The target was where intelligence suggested he would be, behaving in ways consistent with documented patterns, protected by defenses that Israeli planners had specifically analyzed and determined were now penetrable through sensor fusion. The confidence level that appeared on operators' screens was not just mathematical probability, it was the culmination of a patient intelligence operation that had turned Hezbollah's defensive doctrine against itself. The munition released at 2:47 a.m. was a precision-guided weapon designed specifically for hardened target penetration with minimal collateral effect. Israeli defense manufacturers had developed it through iterative testing that balanced penetrating power against blast radius control. The warhead incorporated a delayed fuse mechanism. It would punch through concrete before detonating, concentrating explosive force inside the target chamber rather than dissipating energy against external walls. Flight time from release to impact was approximately 8 seconds. During those seconds, the AI system continued monitoring sensor feeds, confirming that the thermal signature remained in the predicted location. There was no indication that Akil had moved from the northeast corner room. The building's other occupants, their heat signatures visible on thermal imaging, showed no awareness of the weapon descending toward them. Impact occurred at the precise coordinate the algorithms had identified. The warhead struck the reinforced concrete at a velocity calculated to maximize penetration. Engineering specifications suggested the concrete wall measured between 90 and 110 centimeters thick, reinforced with steel bars spaced at 15-centimeter intervals. The munitions, kinetic energy, and shaped penetrator design were calibrated for exactly this type of barrier. The warhead breached the concrete, creating a narrow channel through which the explosive force would be directed inward. The fuse activated once the penetrator had passed through the wall and entered the interior space. Detonation occurred inside the reinforced chamber where Ibrahim Akil had believed himself protected by architecture that had shielded Hezbollah commanders for years. The blast wave, contained within a confined space, achieved immediate lethality. Akil died instantly. The shaped charge's design focused explosive energy in specific vectors, avoiding the omnidirectional dispersion that would have devastated adjacent rooms. Structural engineers would later analyze the damage pattern and note that while the target chamber was completely destroyed, the wall separating it from neighboring apartments remained partially intact. The family sleeping in the adjacent unit felt a violent tremor, heard a concussive roar, but survived without serious physical injury. Israeli sensors monitoring the strike confirmed target elimination within 90 seconds. The thermal signature that had represented Akil's position disappeared from imaging systems. Secondary heat sources, fires, structural collapses, human panic appeared on the feeds. but the primary objective had been achieved. The AI system that had identified his location through concrete barriers had directed a weapon that killed him through those same barriers with surgical precision. The operation validated a capability that military strategists had theorized, but never operationally confirmed at this scale. Through-wall targeting had moved from engineering speculation to documented reality. The algorithms had processed sensor data that human operators could not have interpreted with sufficient confidence, generated a targeting solution that conventional methods could not have achieved, and enabled a strike that eliminated a high-value target in a densely populated civilian area without causing the mass casualties that would have resulted from conventional bombing. Within minutes, Israeli intelligence networks detected Hezbollah's emergency response. Communications intercepts revealed confusion among security personnel trying to understand what had happened. The building had not been visibly damaged from the outside in ways consistent with a conventional airstrike. There was no crater in the street, no destroyed facade suggesting a large bomb, yet the reinforced safe-house chamber had been penetrated and its occupant killed. Hezbollah security teams reached the location and began evacuating survivors while securing the scene against further attacks. The organization's immediate assumption was that Israeli intelligence had somehow placed explosives inside the building, perhaps through recruited agents, perhaps through long-term infiltration that had gone undetected. This explanation, while troubling, fit within Hezbollah's operational framework. Insider threats were a known vulnerability that could be addressed through intensified vetting and counterintelligence. The truth, when forensic analysis eventually revealed it, proved more strategically devastating. Munition fragments recovered from the scene indicated an air-launched precision weapon, not a planted explosive device. The blast pattern showed external penetration, not internal placement. Israeli sensors had seen through concrete that Hezbollah had considered opaque. The strike had come from above, guided by technology that made reinforced structures transparent to algorithmic targeting. Damage assessment, conducted by Israeli intelligence through post-strike surveillance, confirmed what operators had intended. The target chamber was destroyed. The building's external structure remained standing. Adjacent apartments had sustained damage from blast effects transmitted through shared walls, but structural collapse had been avoided. Casualties were limited to the target and potentially his immediate security personnel occupying the same hardened space. The precision achieved that night represented a convergence of technological capability and intelligence preparation. The AI system had functioned as designed, identifying a human target through barriers that defeated conventional sensors. The munition had performed according to engineering specifications, penetrating concrete and detonating with contained lethality. The intelligence preparation that preceded the strike, months of surveillance, pattern analysis, structural assessment had provided the context that made the technology operationally useful rather than theoretically impressive. For Israeli planners, the strike demonstrated that a strategic problem that had constrained targeting options for years had been solved. Hezbollah commanders could no longer assume that concrete walls in civilian proximity provided absolute protection. The defensive doctrine that had preserved leadership survival through infrastructure hardening had encountered a technological capability that rendered those defenses inadequate. Hezbollah's leadership convened emergency meetings within hours, struggling to understand how the strike penetrated a reinforced safe house without destroying the building or causing mass civilian casualties. Security teams recovered munition fragments, confirming the attack came from above, not from planted explosives more disturbing than infiltration, which could be countered through tighter security. The strike invalidated core assumptions. Hezbollah's defensive doctrine relied on hardened structures, blocking visual acquisition and making coordinate-based targeting uncertain. If Israeli technology achieved through wall detection, sophisticated enough to track individuals and guide weapons with room-level precision, then no commander was truly protected by architecture alone. Within days, behavioral changes appeared. Senior figures reduced time in fixed locations, accelerated safe house rotation, enhanced electronic countermeasures. These adaptations carried costs, increased movement, created surveillance opportunities. Abandoned infrastructure, wasted investment. Enhanced protocols slowed decision-making. The psychological impact was strategically significant. Concrete walls had provided not just physical protection, but confidence. That certainty shattered. Every bunker now carried uncertainty about whether Israeli sensors had already mapped its interior. Security reviews led to arrests within Hezbollah's protection apparatus. What the organization could not counter was AI-enhanced surveillance's fundamental advantage. Persistence and pattern recognition at scales, defeating human adaptability. The Dahieh safe house was repaired, but its function as sanctuary had been fundamentally compromised. The Dahieh strike forced regional actors to recalculate defensive strategies. If hardened structures no longer protected against precision strikes, the entire architecture of Middle Eastern conflict required reassessment. Iranian planners confronted immediate implications. Tehran had invested decades in underground facilities, nuclear sites at Natanz and Fordo, buried beneath concrete and earth, hardened missile production centers, dispersed command bunkers. If Israeli sensors could identify individuals through walls, could similar technology map tunnel networks with precision sufficient to guide strikes against critical nodes? Ventilation systems and power consumption patterns became potential targeting signatures. Hamas leadership in Gaza reassessed their extensive tunnel networks. The underlying defensive logic matched Lebanese safe houses, create barriers sensors cannot penetrate. The Dahieh strike suggested Israeli technology was evolving toward capabilities that might transform tunnels from sanctuaries into cataloged vulnerabilities. Israeli strategic messaging was deliberately calibrated. Officials declined to confirm technological details while providing enough information to ensure adversaries understood capabilities demonstrated. The goal was deterrence without revealing limitations. Paranoia about penetration could be as strategically valuable as actual penetration. Defense analysts globally examined the operation as a case study in military AI application. The technological advantage would not remain exclusive indefinitely. China, Russia, and others pursued similar capabilities. Whether the strike would deter attacks, provoke escalation, or shift conflict into different domains remained uncertain. Ibrahim Akil was born in 1,960 inches, Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, during the country's descent into civil war. He joined Hezbollah's military wing after Israel's 1982 invasion, receiving training in Iran that included guerrilla warfare and explosives. By the early 1992s, he held operational command positions within the Islamic resistance. Western intelligence connected him to the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing that killed 241 Americans and 58 French paratroopers. The United States indicted him and offered $7 million for information leading to his arrest. Within Lebanon and Syria, he operated freely under Hezbollah's protection. His command of the Radwan Force represented his career apex, a unit trained for cross-border operations and potential invasion of northern Israel. On the night he died, Akil followed security protocols that had protected him for years. Varied schedules, hardened locations, minimal electronic communication. They failed against sensor technology he may not have fully understood existed. The Dahieh safe house stands repaired, but its function as sanctuary has been compromised. Somewhere in Israeli databases, the building remains cataloged. Algorithms that identified Akil through meter-thick concrete continue processing new data, preparing targeting solutions for operations yet to occur. Whether his death prevents future strikes or simply demonstrates vulnerabilities that will be exploited again depends on adaptations still in progress.